Dear students, myself Dr. Fatima Sultana. Today I am going to take your topic Environmental Impact Assessment, which is also known as EIA. Now, development projects in the past were undertaken without any consideration to their environmental consequences. In view of the colossal damage to the environment, governments and public are now concerned about the environmental impacts of developmental activities. We are seeing continuously that what damage is being done to the environment. To assess the environmental impacts, the mechanism of environment impact assessment, also known as EIA, was introduced. Generally, we listen to the word EIA, which means Environment Impact Assessment. Now, EIA is a tool to anticipate the likely environmental impacts that may arise out of the proposed developmental activities and suggest mitigation measures and strategies. EIA was introduced in India in 1978 with respect to river valley projects. We know about the various river valley projects. The Bhakra Nangal Dam is one of the very famous valley project. And after that, later, the EIA legislation was enhanced to include other developmental sections. Now, EIA comes under notification on environmental impact assessment of developmental projects in 1994 under the provision of Environment Protection Act 1986. Now, besides EIA, the Government of India, under Environment Protection Act 1986, issued a number of other notifications which are related to environmental impact assessment. EIA is now mandatory for more than 30 categories of projects, and these projects get environmental clearance only after EIA requirements. Now, once they get the requirements fulfilled, then EIA gives them the approval. That is, the project is approved, and now environmental clearance or the go ahead signal is granted by the Impact Assessment Agency in the Ministry of Environment and Forest, Government of India. In Government of India, there is a full ministry which handles the environment and forest projects. So once the clearance has been given by EIA, then the go ahead signal will be issued, and the provision of acceptance will be taken, and the permission will be granted by Ministry of Environment and Forest, that is of Government of India. So all projects that require clearance from central government have to fulfill all the requirements given by the EIA. Now, what are the projects? The projects that require clearance from central government can be broadly categorized into the following sectors, that is, industries, mining, thermal power plants, river valley projects, infrastructure, coastal regulation zone, and nuclear power projects. So, all projects that require clearance from central government were categorized under these following categories. So, individual projects that need require clearance from central government, even nuclear power and related projects, river valley projects that include tidal power, major irrigation and flood control, even ports, harbors, airports, they also require EIA permission. Petroleum refineries, including crude and product pipelines, chemical fertilizers and pesticides, petrochemical complexes and petrochemical intermediates, and production of basic plastics, bulk drugs and pharmaceuticals, exploration for oil and gas and their production, transportation and storage, synthetic rubber, asbestos and asbestos products, hydrocyanic acid and its derivatives, primary metallurgical industries such as production of iron and steel, aluminum, copper, zinc, lead, and ferroalloys, chloroalkali industries, integrated paint complex including in manufacture of resins and basic raw materials required in the manufacture of paints, storage batteries integrated with manufacture of oxides of lead and lead antimony alloy, all tourism projects between 200-meter to 500-meter of high water line at locations with an elevation of more than 1000 meters with investment more than 5 crores. Thermal power projects, mining projects, highway projects, except projects relating to improvement work provided it does not pass through ecologically sensitive areas such as national parks, sanctuaries, tiger reserves, reserve forest, tarred roads in Himalayas and forest areas, distilleries, even raw skins and hide, the leather industry, pulp, paper and newsprint, dyes, cement, electroplating. All this comes under the broad categories of these following sectors: industries, mining, thermal power plants, river valley projects, infrastructure, coastal regulation zone, and nuclear power projects. Now, the environment impact assessment. There are three important aspects of this EIA: risk assessment, environmental management, and post product monitoring. All these three aspects have to be fulfilled to get the EIA permission. Now, what are the functions of EIA? EIA is to serve as a primary environmental tool with clear provisions, apply consistently to all proposals with potential environmental impacts, use scientific practice and suggest strategies for mitigation, address all possible factors such as short term, long term, and small scale, large scale effects. We can see the various factors. They can be short term, long term, or small scale and large scale effects. Now, EIA is to consider sustainable aspects such as capacity for assimilation, carrying capacity, biodiversity protection, etc. Lay down flexible approach for public involvement. It involves the public involvement. EIA is to lay down a flexible approach for public involvement, have inbuilt mechanism of follow up and feedback. It takes up this EIA has a mechanism of follow up and feedback. It takes feedback from the public. Therefore, the public involvement is very important for EIA permission. Now, after follow up, it includes mechanism for monitoring, auditing, and evaluation. So, all these functions are being looked after by EIA, that is Environment Impact Assessment. Now, there are environmental components of EIA which has to be looked. The EIA process looks into the various components of the environment. One is air environment, quality of ambient air present and predicted, meteorological data, wind speed, direction, humidity, etc. Quantity of emission likely from the project coming out, the emissions which are coming out from the project. Impact of the emission on the area. What are the various impacts on the area around it? Pollution control, desires air quality standards. Next comes the noise. Now, what amount of noise is being produced by the project which is to be implemented in that particular area? The levels of noise present and predicted, the strategies for reducing noise pollution. If it is an industry which is producing a lot of noise, there should be strategies for reducing the noise pollution. Water environment, because the effluents are generally released in the water around it. So existing ground and surface water resources, their quality and quantity within that zone, impact of proposed project on water resources. So EIA also looks after these factors. Biological environment, the flora and fauna which is impacted in that zone where the any industry or the project is to be started. Potential damage likely due to the project, due to effluents, emissions, and landscaping. Biological stress, the various biological stress which are being predicted due to that project. Land environment, so EIA is to study of soil characteristics, land use and drainage pattern and the likely adverse impact of the project. Impact on the historical monuments and heritage sites. Now, this Mathura refinery industry, we all know that the effluents, the emissions coming out from this refinery was damaging the walls, the marble of this Taj Mahal, which is the world famous monument. Now, what are the benefits of environment impact assessment? What is the purpose of EIA? It promotes sustainable development by identifying environmentally sound practice and mitigation measures for development. Now, any type of development has to be done, whether it is infrastructure or in some industry or nuclear power project or thermal project. So, it will promote the sustainable development by identifying the environmentally sound practice and mitigation measures for this development to ensure that environmental consequences were taken into account during planning and designing and decision making process to influence how it is subsequently managed during its implementation. The adverse impacts could be avoided or reduced. So, the benefits of this EIA is that it looks after sustainable development along with providing mitigation measures and the adverse impacts which can be avoided or reduced. Thank you so much.